Mr. Wilson? Okay. All right, the next question goes first to David Everhart. What is the greatest ethical dilemma you have seen during your time with SGA? How was it handled, and what was your role, and would you have handled it differently?
Greatest ethical dilemma that happened for me dealt with the football voting. During football voting, roughly 3,000 people were disenfranchised because they did not pay fees. I felt this was an injustice because football impacts everyone here on campus. It's more than just a fee. The way I tried to implement against this was I talked to the administration, I implemented legislation in student government, and I got the students to bring this to the forefront. Ultimately, through my actions, it was determined that, well, it could unfairly balance the vote if we let these people vote because they have nothing monetarily invested. So the students of Kennesaw responded, and the students said, we agree with the administration, they can't vote. I would do nothing different because working within the system is the best way to make change happen.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
From my time at SGA, the state has never voted anyone down, and I do feel like that is a problem. I think people come into SGA for the wrong reasons, most importantly for a stipend, and that does not mean that they're going to do their best, to give their best effort. They're not going to do everything they could do. They're just going to do the bare minimum to get their stipend, and I feel like that is a problem. Personally, I have voted no on people because I do not feel like they have the right intentions, and if elected president, I will make sure that people in SGA will deserve to be in the SGA and do what they need to do to deserve a stipend.
Okay. Mr. McConaughey?
I think one of the biggest ethical dilemmas that SGA has been faced with happened at the end of last semester. Our current Vice President, Darius Wilson, had graduated and we needed to find somebody to fill a spot. Our current President, Ollie Cameron, has the authority to just appoint who he wants, but instead of doing that, he completely took himself out of the decision, appointed a committee, and went with their recommendation, which ultimately was unanimous, and we have Stephen as our Vice President because of that. I think that the decision that he made was a great one. Would I handle it differently? Probably not. I think that that's a fantastic example of ethical leadership.
Okay. 1 minute rebuttal, starting with Mr. Everhart.
The only thing I'd like to point out is that in SGA we have certain executives and directors who are directly responsible for people. What I would like to see in order to make sure everything is kept transparent and ethical is to have monthly counseling or reporting to grow new leaders in SGA and also tell people when they're not doing things or not performing well. Right now you hear a lot of complaints among people saying, well, I don't think this person is performing, but there's very little done to rectify the situation. Just by sitting down with your leaders and your subordinates and talking to them and saying, what are your goals? What can you do to improve? Or this is how you're failing me, could be one way of challenging your own leaders and fixing that type of ethical situation.
Mr. Wilson?
There are actually policies in place to have checks and balances in SGA currently. When someone marks down or someone does a bad job, their director is supposed to notify them after they turn in their stipend on what wrong they did. So that being said, there's no reason for no one to know why they're not doing a good job and for there to be improvement weekly and monthly in SGA.
Mr.
Yeah,
McConaughey?
I do agree there is a system in place, but I think it could definitely be improved. Communication, especially between the executive board and the Senate within SGA, is sometimes very weak. I experienced that a lot myself, having been a senator in the fall and then promoted to the executive board in the spring. The difference in the amount of information that you have as an executive compared to a senator is huge. So I definitely think that something SGA needs to work on internally is improving communication and collaboration between the executive board and the existing Senate.
All right, the next question goes first to Stephen Wilson.